Hey, what is going on, everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and welcome back to another episode of ModChat. For those who do not know, this here is my podcast I do at least once a month in two different forms. First of all, it is available in a video visual form here on the Mr. Mario 2011 YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey channels. Additionally, it's also available like an actual podcast in an audio-only form, so you can take it around and listen to it wherever the hell you want to. Simply look up ModChat, all one word, on your favorite podcasting app, host, provider, or platform, and you should hopefully be able to find it. I know it's not available on all of them, but it is available on most of them. Either way, ModChat is my podcast where, like I said, I come on here at least once a month, and I talk to you about things that I find new, interesting, cool, maybe funny, do a little bit of show and tell sometimes in the world of video game modding and video game console modding. And I have to say this here, I'm going to give you all a heads up. Now, I'm recording this before I end up editing, but I already know that this is going to be a really long episode, and there's a lot that's going to be covered. I'm actually just dropping this at a time where I normally wouldn't on here, just like a day and such, because if I keep holding off for this episode, just more stuff is just going to keep getting added in. And I will say, I've been doing this show for so many years now at this point. I actually, was the first year, was it like 2015? I think it might have been. I think 2015 was the first year I ended up doing this show, and this is probably the most dense, the most packed, the most impressive amount of things and developments and just everything across different scenes that I've ever done in any other single episode. Because, you know, when there's some news that is really big and like sometimes I'll dedicate an entire episode to it, imagine multiple ones of those episodes rolled into one, and that's pretty much what this episode is right here. So if the long runtime is going to steer people clear of it, that is totally fine. Thank you very much for at least hanging out if you decided to click or listen to this here. But trust me, there's going to be a lot of stuff, a lot of really big stuff that we're going to be covering here. And, we should probably just get it right into it, right? This first one is a big one here, and I'm going to have the original talk linked down below in the description of this video, but this here is from Marcus Gastelin, otherwise known as Doom, so I'll be referring to him as Doom throughout the rest of this segment here, but he ended up fully hacking the original Xbox One, and you can see it right here. Actually, he just covered it. Now, I ended up sitting down and watching this. This was at the Reverse conference this year, and this was highly anticipated, but last year he actually ended up covering this right here, in which he was fully reverse engineering the original Xbox. So this guy has done the Xbox One as well as the Xbox One. But that was also an excellent talk, and I would recommend watching the both of them if you have 2 hours worth of time. He's done some really impressive work, and the man hours he put into the original Xbox was astounding. I believe he said from 2021 to 2024, he spent 4,000 hours total, about 4,000 hours reverse engineering the original Xbox. So really cool to see right there. But in short, this is so big because this is the original Xbox One that is getting hacked, mind you, the one from 2013, but this here has been described by him as a God mode hardware hack, and he ended up reversing everything on here. He's got access to everything. For anybody who might be wondering why it took so long to reverse engineer the Xbox One, well, he's got a full talk on it, and I'm going to talk about several different aspects of it here, kind of just summarizing it. But again, if you have an hour worth of time, please watch the original one. This segment here is not going to fully do it justice. But I clearly remember, like, people have been waiting for this since 2013 and even earlier. I clearly remember back in the day when people were anticipating the successor to the Xbox 360, and they were wondering what kind of mod, what kind of hack would happen, how it would end up working. People were preparing in different ways, which I'm not even really sure how you could prepare for that there. But the system has been so secure, and it has been so secure for so long that, yeah, we didn't end up seeing a huge modification and a huge breakpoint like this until now. Yes, we did have collateral damage, which was a software-based exploit that I've covered on here, but there hasn't been too much that you could do with that. This here, however, is a hardware exploit, so that means that you can do this, but there's going to be a few caveats here, and you are also going to need to, of course, solder a few things. Even covering it here in this meme, or I guess this graph here, it was covered that the Xbox One seen progress back in 2024. Well, you could see right here here, it was shown that at the very beginning, I mean, we have SRA user mode. We were somewhere, and this is 2 years ago now, we were somewhere between SRA user mode and SRA kernel mode, because I believe that was a kernel exploit. It's been a while since I've really touched collateral damage, but you could see this is about where we were at. And this is where we've wanted to be, and this is where we're at right now, the security processor. And yeah, you can see that that's past the operating system and past the hypervisor, so we're in for a good time here. Now, I'm going to be jumping around a bit here, covering this and kind of summarizing it for you all, but in short, this only covers the original Xbox One. And I'm not just talking about the FAT model, I'm talking about the original one. You need to have specifically an Xbox One FAT model from 2013 or manufactured up to fall 2014. But anything fall 2014 or later is not going to be impacted by this, unfortunately. This is due to the SoC on there. He states here that the year one Zorro SoCs had hardware-based anti-glitching monitors fused off. But he does state here that for the fall 2014 and forward, consoles may be harder to glitch, but I strongly believe that this work can be adapted to all FAT Xbox One consoles, not by me. Hint, LOL past the glitch monitor enablement if they're tripping. So if you have an original Xbox One model, it might be compatible if it is old enough. However, if you have an Xbox One S or an Xbox One X, he does state here that boot continued to evolve and has been hardened even further, because there's two processors that you have to reverse, not just one. And he states that the techniques described here have relevant application toward attacking these systems. And for anybody who's on the current gen who's asking what about the Series S or the Series X, he does state here very quickly, I have not investigated it at all. So this is really just for the original, like the first run of Xbox One models. Now, he has said that a mod chip is very possible, but not by him. And even if you look at the install, and I'll show some of the pictures and such here, he ended up using a Teensy setup and he was glitching it, but this could be possible using either something like a Teensy or even a Raspberry Pi Pico. Yeah, that thing is coming back here. So something like that could be utilized, or maybe we'll even see some kind of proprietary mod chip. But again, he said it's not him, but he has shown the necessary signals here, some information on glitching, and also showing that all of his other signals, bodges, traces, and glitches are purely research and introspection. But for anybody who's asking ETA when Xbox scene, he personally believes it is 12 years too late. That is his opinion on it though, but I would side on that a little bit here. But really, for anybody who might be asking, why would you want to reverse engineer the Xbox One? Why would you want to work on that system? It's such an old system. You can play those games on the Xbox Series. They're going to be better, especially if you're only working with the original first run FAT VCR models. I mean, shout out to MVG, always calling it the VCR model there, but this I thought was pretty gangster. He said he did not want to do this to pirate games. He wanted to do this because he was the only one who could do it. Now, if you watch this here, he moves really fast. It's funny watching it. He was really incredibly respectful of the time given to him, but part of that is he ends up talking quite fast and going through a lot of this in really quick succession. But you can even see here that obtain code execution on the Bootrom and God mode is enabled right there. So he starts going through the process of, talking about the teardown, showing the system. I still remember images like this floating out there. Real quick, when people were talking about, this is like back in the day, 2013 or so, when people were talking about like how this might be hacked up, modded up and such, I was personally thinking the first things we were going to see were optical drive emulators, because look at this right here. Look at how much space is sitting there between the hard drive and the Blu-ray drive. You could really comfortably fit some kind of ODE device right there. So I was thinking we might get some kind of ODE device and then eventually get unsigned code, but well, we end up getting unsigned code on this first, way later. I didn't expect it would take this long, but neither did most people. Now, even here, once he's going through these specs and such on this, he's talking about, the security subsystem, he's covering this here, and he ends up showing some of the die shots here. You can check this out, and the piece that he's looking for, this is everything mapped out. You got these security processors down here, and essentially this little tiny rectangle that he's highlighting, that's what he's looking for. That is the boot ROM. And specifically, that's how tiny it is. That's it. And specifically, he's not even going for the boot ROM itself, he's going for the secure state boot ROM. And the reason why he's only covering the secure state boot ROM here is because he said that if that's compromised, then everything is compromised. You can even see here on screen, he says these are Microsoft boot ROMs, these are not AMD boot ROMs, so he was not working with, you know, let's say like a motherboard or another type of device that end up using the same SoC as on the Xbox One. No, this was all using original Xbox One retail hardware, which makes this even more impressive. It was really cool seeing this though, and I had a little bit of a laugh because he actually ended up really complimenting the boot ROM as well too. You can state here that the TLDR of it is that the code is simple, linear, and well reviewed. There are no software bugs. He has that in red. And he also states there's a huge difference between writing a bug-free code versus designing security-conscious, fault-tolerant code. The anti-glitch patterns and mitigations Microsoft employed were far ahead of its time for 2013. Now you could see here that when it comes to the attacking hardware, he had a bare motherboard right here, and he's no stranger to glitching. Neither are any of us on the channel here. You see, he's even talking about the Xbox 360 reset glitch hack in which we had postcodes, the reset pin, the PLL bypass, and to what these all lead to. So you can use the postcodes here for clear timing indicators for progress through boot, used to anchor when glitch. The reset pin, brief pulses to the reset pin on the CPU would corrupt execution and skip branches, and the PLL bypass pin slows the CPU clock to make glitch timing easier. If you've never looked into how RGH actually works on 360, it's not for everyone, but it is, for the people who it is for, it is really fascinating seeing how it's done. But you can see here that he's covered 360 glitching pretty well. But could we do this on the Xbox One? Or I guess why wasn't it possible until now on the Xbox One? Well, it was not possible for these reasons on screen here. First of all, there is no postcodes. He states here that the SP0 boot ROM and SP1 have postcodes compiled in, but they're disabled by eFuses. He does state that SP2 emits postcodes, but SP1, SP2 are revocable, so we don't care about attacking them. There's also no reset pin, so here, the platform security processor execution is not influenced by the SoC's main reset pin. The PSP reset is tied to POW_OK chain instead, and releases automatically after PLL locks. He does state that this is kind of annoying and it causes a natural jitter for when the PSP begins execution, and there's no PLL bypass pin, no clear way to slow PSP boot, plus several watchdogs between the PSP and the SMC. So you can see here, even on the 2013 model, Microsoft absolutely went scorched earth and didn't want any kind of glitching on the system to be successful. Just to show even further at a software level, I just had to skip ahead a little bit just to show you all how impressive this was here, talking about the boot ROM and the logical breakdown here. This is how impressive it was. So when developing this, Microsoft even had the idea in place where in case encryption ends up getting busted, the system is still going to be protected. And what I mean by that is you could see here to verify the SP1 header, there's dual signature. It has RSA 4096 encryption as well as ECDSA P384 encryption on there. Now, the best way to describe how impressive this is how Doom described it here. You see, he ended up saying, I'm going to paraphrase it, but just paraphrasing, he essentially ended up saying that with the dual signature setup on here, this was designed in such a way so that even if RSA 4096 encryption ended up getting cracked in the future and it was used to hack into the Xbox One, your job still wasn't done because it had a whole other signature that you had to crack. So essentially, even if you end up breaking the encryption on the Xbox One, you only got to one of them, and the Xbox One was still secure, even if the rest of the world was on fire, which, yeah, that would happen if RSA 4096 was broken. Now, this does involve some incredibly fine soldering, and just for the visuals right here, I'm going to show something that he actually shows, which people on the channel I'm sure would be pretty familiar with. This is RGH3 right here, a typical RGH3 Trinity install, which does require some quite fine soldering. Yeah, no, this is what he ended up doing with the Xbox One, so it's just going to be a little bit finer right here with what he was putting in. While he was being a madman at work, you even have this photo right here when he was really trying to find all the points, probe, and see what he could get to, because he was really working from nothing from the beginning here. If you need something even further, it doesn't look like this is going to be used for an install whenever, you know, these methods and such are presumably out there, but this is also the stuff he was doing too. He needed a voltage shifter here. So this was the work he ended up doing. He ended up putting this chip in. You could see the incredibly fine soldering he put in here. So yeah, absolutely not for the faint of heart. Not at all. Even once he was getting this a little more fine-tuned here, he was still getting closer and closer. You could see, well, there's additional wires that are in place here. And this here, you can see he is getting closer and closer to the final thing. He had to remove some caps. He had to isolate the NB core. And you can see that this is just getting a little more intricate and even finer and finer with what he's wiring up here. In the process, he even found unmarked post or GPIO pins, you can see right here. But, you know, now I guess once you have your Xbox One hacked up, modded up and everything, you could make use of these. But like I said earlier, since post codes were disabled, even if you wire something up to these, like I said, they are not marked, but even if you wire something up to them, you don't get anything out of it, unfortunately, until you actually modify the system. He did manage to enable those post codes there, so that ended up helping out quite a bit, which again, you could even see further from this is more refined. This is how his glitching setup started to look right here. You could see his glitches right there. GPIO was initialized, and then the beautiful thing is, there we go, first post, he was actually able to start getting and decrypting the post codes. And that's really important because he even says right here that since those are on, it makes it easier to study the Bootrom, stalls, and power traces. And he said we demonstrated the first ever meaningful glitches to the Xbox One. It says PSP, but I believe that's the platform security processor. I believe that's there. With it being noted that this broke the illusion that the chip would be unhackable. Even gods can bleed. By the way, if you need some extra fine soldering photos right here, here's another one with a resistor he ended up installing there. And even this right here, which, I mean, dude, props for doing this. This is incredible right here. Now, what is this all leading to? Well, this is what he called the Bliss hack. So right here, I'm going to let this part play out, but this here is a video in a video in a video since you're watching this one, you know. But right here, he shows in his apartment his glitching setup, his Xbox One right there, all wired up, ready to go and turned on. And he has everything loaded up there. So you can see in the top right corner, he's got some details. We're about 22 seconds, so it takes a little bit of time, but there we go. Bliss when pulse, code execution detected. Then everything starts to move. And this is when people started to clap. Like, people were pretty excited because then he's able to start scrolling up. We see all the E-fuses right there. And something even cooler, you see everything decrypted. And you end up getting to see the bootloader right here. You could see, let me back that up a tiny bit. You could see here the Bliss hack, Hello World from SP0, Mischief Managed from Doom. And then the boot ROM ends up getting dumped. So he scrolls down a little bit. You can see that this has been reverse engineered because you can read this in plain text. If you've ever run something like this through a hex editor, if it's just garbage looking data, it's encrypted. But this here, it is plain text, it's decrypted, and it states here, Microsoft Corporation, all rights reserved. Do not unlawfully hack, circumvent, reverse engineer, glitch, modify, or copy. So they took glitching into account right here as well. But like I said, this is when everybody started to clap because this here was pretty funny and pretty big all at once. Now you might be asking yourself, what's better than a glitch method? Well, how about a double glitch method? I'm not kidding when I say that. He's showing with the Bliss hack here that there is one glitch to skip the MPU enablement, and there is a second glitch to hijack PC as USR. Shell code is then executed as USR, and then this achieves arbitrary code execution as supervisor during SP0, which means which is important because it states that there's no higher privilege on the entire system. So at that point, once you have the double glitch set up there successfully, you have God mode access to the system. That's it. The system is yours. Now, if you're wondering what you'll be able to do with this here and what exactly this means, well, right here, he even covers that this level of compromise enables the ability to decrypt, load, patch, and execute unsigned code at every level. That's the PSP, SCP, Hypervisor, Host OS, Game OS, System OS. By the way, yeah, when they were originally revealing the Xbox One and they said there's 3 OSs, they weren't kidding. There's actually 3 OSs installed on the system itself. Oracle Access enabling decryption of all games, firmware, content, and updates, past, present, and future, because this is important for preservation efforts, he noted, as well as better console reliability. So unpaired NANDs, unpaired optical disk drives, we actually have more of a fighting chance at fixing these here. In addition to that, because again, this is the earlier hardware, but it is a hardware-based attack, it is unpatchable, so a software update cannot knock this out once you have this installed. Actually, I'd say as well too that even if these systems were patched through software right now, like, you can't patch them because because this is not a software level thing. This is not software. This is at the silicon level right here, which for anybody who hasn't seen it, there's also another, it's several years old now, but there is another talk from Tony Chin years ago who ended up talking about the security behind the Xbox One, what they worked on, how they did it, how they were able to build it up. And he says something along the lines of, the only way the Xbox One would get hacked, they were so confident it wasn't going to be software. They were incredibly confident about that. But they said the only way, the only possible way the Xbox One could get hacked up was if there was an issue at a silicon level. That would be the only way. And that's what happened here. So this is even more important because once you have the boot ROM, you're that early in, boot ROM and anything afterwards is fair game. If you want a real example of that, you could look at the Nintendo Switch, for example. The Nintendo Switch, I believe it was the first year, there was that boot ROM bug, and it was just fused jelly where you could end up pushing a payload through USB. But that was so big because that was boot ROM. You can essentially control how the system boots up and such at that point, and you can control what you're wanting to. So once you have boot ROM, everything else is fair game, as they have said on here. I also want to note that this is also really cool for the preservation aspect of it, just because you have to remember, a lot of people forget this, but you have to remember, and he's referencing the Tony Chen talk, but you have to remember that the Xbox One, even the Xbox Series consoles, they require online access in order to get up and running. If for some reason you cannot get online, you cannot get internet on that system, you're going to be doing a whole lot of nothing on there. So if there's a way to at least bypass that, to at least do something else with that brick of a system using this, then that's bliss. Quite literally, that's bliss. This is really cool so far. This is awesome. People have been asking me to cover this here, and I'm going to tell you all this. I'm sure there's going to be some documentation that will be out there. There's going to be some methods that are coming out. We are seeing progress already. Like the day after this came out, people are showing tutorials over how to reverse and load up the boot ROM through Ghidra, which is incredibly fast seeing that here. But I would say, let's just go ahead, wait and see what happens here, what's going to be available, and what will happen. And I'm sure these methods are going to get refined and such. And I believe even Doom himself, he had been asked near the end of this, they're asking him about the glitching aspect of this. And he said that, you saw in the video here, his system took about 30 seconds to glitch that time. But he did say he ended up recording a video of it because he did have the system set up at his apartment. He could live stream into it, but it wasn't super refined. His glitching method could take anywhere from maybe like a minute to 30 minutes, something like that. So we're thinking like RGH2 timings, if you remember that. But he said that his method is not really that refined, and he believes that if you really sit down and refine it, you could probably get this to successfully glitch within a second. So we're just going to see what happens. Since we're talking about Xbox stuff, well, we can talk about Xbox Series. And now hold on, this is not going to be any type of hack or modification or reverse or any of that. Actually, I guess there is going to be some reversing here. But this here is a page I wanted to link and at least share, kind of in the spirit of everything, from user Daniel L. McGuire, which is Xbox Series internal architecture research. Now, I'm really not going to be getting into this at all here, but they state in the summary here that this report documents a static and dynamic analysis of the Xbox Series S internal architecture conducted entirely through Microsoft's official developer mode infrastructure. No exploits or policy violations were used. All access was within the bounds of the individual developer program. This contains details from the highest level components used for gameplay down to the lowest level system driver components. Most of these details are expected to be the same for the Xbox One as well. So just keeping that in mind, and if anybody is wanting some kind of information on this, if you're curious, if there's something that you're specifically looking for, or even if you're just thinking that this is cool and you want to give it a little bit of a read, feel free to. This is really cool to see. So we went from the Xbox One to the Xbox Series back to the Xbox One. Kinda. We're going to the original Xbox here with XbDiag from developer Dark183. This here is an original Xbox diagnostic suite, which was just released and is still getting updates right now, even while I'm recording this. Wow, there is a lot. Okay, you can see there's betas on betas coming out on this, so there is a lot of detail here and a lot that's happening on this. But in short, this here is a hardware diagnostic suite for the original Xbox. XbDiag is a native RxDK application that runs directly on original Xbox hardware, revisions 1.0 through 1.6, and debug kits. It gives you a deep look at the internal state of the machine, RAM integrity, SM bus devices, temperatures, EEPROM contents, hard drive identity, video encoder, controller hardware, and DVD drive, all presented in a clean, full-screen UI with no dependencies outside the Xbox kernel, and it looks a little something like this, you can see. So you know what, here, in the spirit of everything, like, you know, modding, preservation, all that, I love seeing stuff like this. This is cool, and you can see how much detail is on this, like, wow, okay, yeah, you got a memory test and everything, and there are separate applications for this, for some of this, but just to have everything in one place, have it be cleanly shown, also have a ton of detail as well too, so if you're really wanting to look into the nitty gritty, you have it all available right here. You might want to give this application a spin. This is super cool. And now, if I didn't say it already, this might be a little bit of a controversial episode because there's going to be some opinions and some things that I have to say here, and one of the first things is going to be Reblue right here. For anybody who does not know, they haven't heard about this, this is Blue Dragon recompiled. They do state that this project is in early development. It currently loads the main menu, but immediately crashes after trying to load a new game cutscene. It appears to be a problem with the file I/O, specifically with how async is being handled. It requires more investigating and hooks, and it was a so this here is taking Blue Dragon, which is still to this day an Xbox 360 exclusive. I believe you can play it through backwards compatibility, but it is not, like, it wasn't re-released on any other systems. It is still a 360 build of the game. It is a 3-disc game. You can only use DVD-1 right now. But it does state here that this is a recompiled game, and it was recompiled using the RexGlue SDK. Now let's go ahead and look at the RexGlue SDK. There is active development on this here, and they state that this is the Xbox 360 recompilation, runtime, and toolkit. It is warned that this is in early development, expect things to not work quite right, and there to be significant changes and breaking public API updates as development progresses. But they state that RexGlue converts Xbox 360 PowerPC code into portable C++ that runs natively on modern platforms. RexGlue is heavily rooted on the foundations of Xenia, the Xbox 360 emulator. Rather than interpreting or just-in-time compiling PowerPC instructions at runtime, RexGlue takes a different path. It generates C++ source code ahead of time, which is an approach inspired by Xenon Recomp as well as RexDex's Recompiler. So this seems like something really, really cool, right? And this is something that initially I was excited for here. And many other people were excited about this as well too, because you even see this, like, you know, Videotech UK, they even stated here, Midnight Club Los Angeles is currently being ported to PC by a group of people using the RexGlue tool, which allows people to compile Xbox 360 games to PC, the tool released recently. And unfortunately, this video is not available now. However, that's probably because of what Silent said here, partially with this. If you don't know about this guy, just look up Silent Patch and see how many games he has officially and unofficially fixed with his own patch. Dude is an absolute legend. He knows quite a bit about this. But going back here, he ended up stating, this seems to produce a standalone executable using Xenia's tech as backend, so any issues present in the emulator are likely going to surface here too. So that's why this has been a little bit controversial, because I mean, people do want more development. People do want this. I also want it as well too, and I really don't want to crap on these projects here, but even Stone Mod are actually a mutual here on the channel. They end up stating every single RexGlue port so far has been like this. I think it's very disingenuous to be calling these ports, and unfortunately I would agree with that. So if we can get more progress on RexGlue, if we can see something there, that'd be awesome. But if we're kind of seeing a little bit of like almost like a Xenia wrapper, or kind of like a half port, half Xenia type setup here, I guess we'll just see what's going on, especially when they state here that since it's using the Xenia backend, any issues that are currently within Xenia are still going to be within these quote-unquote ports of games. Now, one thing that I always see asked, and I get asked about quite a bit, is when is the 360 soft mod coming? When is the 360 soft mod coming? When is the 360 soft mod coming? When is it going to be, when's it going to be dropping? What's the progress on it? Well, Grim Doomer ended up announcing a ETA here with ETA Win. The ETA is that it's ready when it's ready, but this is a really cool GitHub page here, a little bit of a meme, but it is quite useful as well, because this here ends up showing you all exactly where he is in the process. Now, it's certainly not at like a code level, mind you, but you can see here that the exploit chain, he has completed all 4 stages. The mainline features, at the time I'm recording this, the mainline features being finished, the kernel XAMPP patches, safe boot mode, and config editor have not been completed yet. There are 6 super cool features that were added. I believe originally there was 4, so he ended up adding 2 more, but there's been 2 of them that have been completed. For the Softmod installer, he has completed the installation flow, but the recovery, uninstall, and finalization have not been covered yet. And for testing, he has only been testing this on a Jasper, or at least that's the one that it is completed with testing here, I guess we can say. So for anybody who is wondering, hey, what is the progress on that soft mod? Where is he at with the soft mod? Just come over to this page here and you'll see it. And by the way, I do want to answer and clarify this as well too. A lot of people typically end up seeing this, like this repository was archived by the owner, it's read-only, it's a public archive, and they've seen this for not only ETA Win, but I'll even come back over to his profile, they've even seen this for Xbox 360 Bad Update. And this here being read-only does not mean that there is no longer any development on here. Now, typically when a project does go read-only on GitHub, that does mean that development has ceased. But at least in the case here, it was not that. I can more so tell you, he ended up setting this to read-only because when you set a repository to read-only on GitHub, you cannot make any merge requests on it, you cannot open up any issues, and you cannot comment on anything. And, trust me, right here with 360 Bad Update, actually you can't even, yeah, I guess you can see the old actions like the pull requests and all that stuff here. There was just a lot of attention that was happening here. A lot of times these had to be cleared out. There were comments that had to be deleted. There was just a ton of notifications, and the problem is when you get in on that, you just keep getting notified of every single thing. So I'm not really trying to speak for Grim here, but I at least know he had gotten annoyed with all of the comments because it was even people commenting on like technical issues and PRs and all that stuff, just opening stuff like, hey, can you help me with this issue? Hey, is this ready? Hey, what about this? So that way you can completely eliminate comment activity if you just set your repo to read only. That's what that means in this context. Oh, but because Grim is a machine here, you could see here he has a really big development shown on the Xbox 360. This was posted on March 9th, and he states here, FATX is dead, exFAT is eternal, exFAT support for hard drive and USB devices, LBA48 support, DVD drive can be replaced with a second hard drive, auto detect on boot, UDMA 5 and 6. Still need to finish some edge cases and run some real performance tests, but Oblivion is loading 6.5 seconds faster on average. And this is only a 8-second video, I want to say, but we can kind of just like look at this a bit here. So looking at this, you could see he has 2 hard drives hooked up. One of them is, let's say, probably about a 16 gigabyte drive. The other one is a 26 terabyte drive. Now you can tell this is definitely a modified system because these are showing, instead of the Microsoft signature, they're showing exFAT, so a little bit of a custom signature right there. But even when he comes down here, he's got his 26 terabyte drive shown and hooked up. And I'm wondering, yep, okay, I can confirm this as well too. This is hooked up to the DVD drive port. So if you want to do like a DVD delete mod, and if you want to pop one of those in there, you certainly can. And actually, I'm noticing now just seeing this drive, excuse me, that was not a 16 gig drive. That was a 20 gigabyte hard drive. So he's got like the old 20 gig hard drive hooked up right there. And then he just replaced the DVD drive with this 26 terabyte drive. So incredible to see right here. I don't know anything more about this than you all do, but I'll say this at least, just kind of based on this here. This is my own theory, this is my own opinion. I know just as much as you all, so I'm kind of theorizing a little bit here. But I would say it's probably safe to say that this compatibility is going to be put into the soft mod. And I'm sure there's also going to be work that will just be published about this as well too, so that even if you have a hard modded system, this will also be adapted and built to be supported to work with hard modded systems. So if you have a JTAG, an RGH, or any type of hard modded system, you're probably not going to be out of it here. But this is super cool. He brought exFAT to the PS2, he's bringing it to the Xbox 360. We also have better support for larger drives, that's why LBA48 is there, and you also have faster speeds with the UDMA 5 and up to 6 working on here. Just incredible work overall. We've been covering a lot. I've been talking a lot. Let's just have like a little bit of break, kind of, those intermissions. Have you ever wanted to play Chex Quest on the Vita? Because if you've wanted to, you can do that now. There is a port to the Vita of Chex Quest. This is the original 1996 one, not that nasty one that came out. Like, this is like a few years ago. I have it on Switch, not the original one, but like the new one that came out that like officially released. I have it on Switch. It's not very good, but this was the game where, in case you do not know, this ended up coming in a cereal box. So it was a box of Chex when you actually would sometimes get full PC games back in the day. And this is essentially just a major mod of Doom. It was Doom, but with cereal, and it was kid-friendly. And it's even available on PSP as well, so if you want to play it on PSP or Vita, or if you want to play the PSP version on the Vita next to the Vita version on your same Vita, you can do that. Have some fun with Chex Quest. I love highlighting these here. I always love highlighting these. I also wanted to cover this here real quick because I had talked about this in the previous episode of ModChat, in which I was talking about the Atmosphere custom firmware for Switch, and I had talked about Cyrus M retiring, and I had essentially said, look, there's so many contributors to Atmosphere custom firmware, so even though Cyrus M is the main developer, and I do wish him well on there, I don't really think we're dead in the water with so many contributors that are there. And then when a new Switch update ends up coming out, there might be a little bit of lag time, so we might not get an update to Atmosphere just as fast as we normally do, but if he ends up leaving and we don't get any updates to Atmosphere, then we have bigger problems than just a system update in the scene. And I'm highlighting this here because Oatmeal Dome ended up stating that, well, this is what happened. Even though this is on the Switch 2, version 22.0.0 came out, which is a major change, meaning the old version of Atmosphere will not boot version 22.0.0. I'm highlighting this here for two reasons. One, because the update versions between the Switch and the Switch 2 are in sync with each other. So if the Switch gets an update, Switch 2 gets an update. If the Switch 2 gets an update, Switch gets an update. We got that covered. By the way, I ended up getting this handheld boost mode on the Switch 2, so when I saw this, I updated my Switch 2 immediately. Although it's sitting next to me and I haven't played it as much. I just haven't been able to play as many video games I'd like to recently, but I do want to tear into this here. But the second reason why I'm covering this is because, well, if we go back here, Alula over on Twitter ended up saying, don't worry, Atmosphere is in good hands. And you can look at their Switch. They have a OLED Switch right here, and it does state that it is running Atmosphere 1.11.0 on the system MMC, and it is running firmware version 22.0.0. Now, this is very early on. If we scroll down here, somebody was thinking that it might have been album hacks, which meant it was just a fake picture that was put up on the system. But you can even check right here over on the GitHub repository. By the time this episode goes out, by the way, there might be an update. There might actually be a new build of Atmosphere out there. But this is just showing that this is work in progress right now. At least at the time I'm recording this, they do have a pull request. They are working on support. And at the moment, there is basic, the console, boots, and functions as expected, 22.0.0 support. So don't ever sleep on this right here. We got Atmosphere, and I had said, look, there's 77 contributors here. It is open source. You can open up issues. You can open up pull requests here. So I'm really hoping, but it's looking like things are going to be okay here. Oh yeah, by the way, if you need a jump scare that is just like completely unexpected here, Zeko Shao ended up showing here random PS3 BDJB vulnerability drop. It's not that I'm unhappy, it's just I'm looking at this in disbelief. It makes sense that there would be vulnerabilities with BDJB, or I guess BDJ technically on the PS3, because, I mean, why would they be updating BDJ specifically on there, and it's older than the PS4, PS5, but it's just funny seeing the BDJ method used on the PS5 and PS4 just randomly dropped on PS3 here. We can see here it states privilege elevation via key store deserialization. They do have some technical details on this, but they state this vulnerability only exists in runtimes based on IBM J9. This vulnerability exists on PS3. This vulnerability does not exist on PS4 and PS5. And does not exist on Sony MediaTek-based Blu-ray players. This vulnerability exists on Sony Renesas, NEC, EMM-A3P, and EMM-A3R-based Blu-ray players and recorders. And is it patched? No. Last checked PS3 4.92. Oh yeah, and since we're talking about the PS3, it's almost like it was listening, but really, I mean, it's around that time of year for being real. There was a new update for the PS3 as well. The system software version is now 4.93, coming from 4.92. Now, I always get asked a few questions, so I guess I'll just knock these ones out of the way. First of all, people might be wondering, why is the PS3 still getting updated? And typically, with these minor updates here, we really haven't seen an update to the PS3 that has actually squashed modding or really changed it in several years at this point. But what happens is about every single year around this time, March or April, there is still an update to the system. Because it says right here, please note to play Blu-ray discs, your PS3 system needs a renewed Blu-ray player encryption key. Please update your PS3 system software to the latest version to renew the Blu-ray player encryption key. So that is really it. The reason why it's still getting updated is at minimum to just update those keys, because they cannot be updated automatically or over the air. They have to be updated through a manual system update. Now, typically, people also wonder, well, how long is this going to take to update all the tools to the new firmware? And it really just depends. I know at the current moment, PS3 custom firmware is being worked on right now, even at 4.93. If you're wanting to modify your system with custom firmware, just wait for PS3 toolset to get updated. Same thing with PS3 Hin. If you want to install PS3 Hin on your system and you're on 4.93, just wait for the installation method to be updated, and typically they are the same. And what about people who have a modified system on 4.92 or lower, whether they're using custom firmware or PS3 Hin? The thing I always advise them is to not update and just to stay offline. You do not have to update the system. If you update it, that is the easiest way to lose your jailbreak. And I know some people like to play online. I'll say this, I'm not one of those people. I don't like playing online. I especially don't like supporting modded systems online. And while there's ways to spoof your firmware to get back online, I never recommend those options there. If you're really that desperate to get on the latest firmware with a modified system, just wait for custom firmware to update, wait for PS3 toolset to update, wait for PS3 Hin to update. Just wait for all that to update and you should be good. So now that we've kind of gotten those quick topics out of the way, let's go ahead and get heavy. I'm going to warn you all, we're getting heavy into the PS4 and PS5 topics right here, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing, but you're going to see why I'm saying what I'm saying. So first of all, we're going to be starting with actually some of the more recent news on here, which does impact people. This was on March 17th, but Dr. Yin Yin, friend of the show here, actually ended up saying PS4 firmware update 13.50 released. PS View view after free userland seems patched. The app is locked. PS5 firmware update 13.00. What will they have done? So this is really important to note here because first of all, if you have a PS4 or PS5 or both that are on a higher firmware and you're waiting for a jailbreak, keep those systems unplugged. Do not update them to the latest firmware. If you update them to the latest firmware, that's on you. By the way, I'm not going to hear that excuse of, oh, I had auto update or something. No. If you're following the modding scene, if you wanted a modded system, if you had an up-to-date system just a few days ago, it's on you to disable that system's updates and keep it offline. And just keep it offline and stay patient until you have something there. But this is really important here because they do state that with update 13.50 here, like he says here, the view after free userland seems to be patched because the app is locked. So that means, unfortunately, even if we have a jailbreak working, and I'm sure it's going to happen with time, that's always what happens here, but if there is a jailbreak available with 13.50, view after free is not going to be that. We're not going to be able to use it for that, unfortunately. So just keep that in mind. Now, relevant here, there's yet another update that I do want to include on here. I wanted to include the old one because it still had some relevant information here, but this is still a newer one with everything considered now from Dr. Yin Yin. He states here, for PS4 users on 13.02 and 13.04, I think you can sleep well since you still have view after free, so if some kernel exploit comes along, you'll be fine. Maybe even some BDJ action, who knows. For people that end up on 13.50 somehow, sign into PSN, activate the console as primary, then download Netflix or buy a YARP game or buy Star Wars Racer Revenge. For PS5 users on 10.20 through 12.00, who have the Star Wars Racer Revenge disc, just wait patiently for Poopsploit implementation, and remember that K-Stuff also takes time too. For users on 10.20 up to 12.40 who don't have Star Wars, you can just wait patiently since you have free user lands, or consider some kind of BDJ unpatching service for up to 12.00. To use BDJ, a physical copy of the Star Wars game is required to unpatch it. If a different kernel exploit comes along, the free user lands like Y2JB or Netflix and Hack should be usable. Finally, for people on 12.60, 12.70, consider buying a YARP game, or if you were online till recently, hopefully you bought something to use as a user land. People that somehow end up on 13.00 should just buy anything like YARP or Star Wars. But that's not even the big news here. Another piece of just, not even big, just huge news. This is actually from Andy Wynn, otherwise known as The Flow. I kind of had to take a pause right there because I was about to say like what stuff he's done, but I'm like, wait a minute, this man has done so much for the PSP, the PS Vita, the PS4, the PS5 scenes, just so many jailbreaks and enhancements and things that we use are thanks to this man. So if you're even just like contextually aware a little bit of the modding scenes that I've mentioned there, you probably know of The Flow, and if you don't know of him, you know of something that he has made. But he stated here, I ported Linux to the PS5 and turned it into a Steam machine, running GTA 5 enhanced with ray tracing. And we can check out this video right here. He is showing this using fast fetch, so that is Ubuntu 24.04.4, even though this is his own port right here, and I believe this ended up being upstreamed, he said later. But you can see here, this is running in 4K, 60 hertz. This is the GPU, there we go, AMD device, 13 dB, VGA compatible. We do have the memory, the swap, disk space, everything there. So he's shown this, and then right here, would you look at that? Would you look at that? That right there is the, oh, he's got wires. Oh, that's cool. Wait a minute. Oh, that's even cooler. Okay, it looks like that's that's got to be the newer PS5, right? Hold on. I had to look it up because, see, the only PS5s I have, I just have base models. So that is not the PS5 Pro. That is the PS5 Slim, mind you. But you can see right there, it's playing Grand Theft Auto 5 beautifully. Like, no issues. Like, yeah, I mean, okay, slight frame drops here, but like, you know, the man ended up just porting this over, which, by the way, it looked like I had seen in a tweet he said that he ended up porting this to PS5 in like 4 months. Like that was the Linux build itself. Like Linux took about 4 months to port over. He does have some additional tweets here saying 4K HDMI video plus audio, all USB ports working, currently running at 3.2 GHz CPU and 2.0 GHz GPU. It can be boosted to 3.5 GHz CPU and 2.23 GHz GPU, but my PS5 Slim model overheats too quickly. The ETA for this is going to be before GTA 6, so we at least have an ETA available, right? This only works with a full chain exploit like Hypervisor, which is what he linked to there, thus only available on older firmwares. And this is what I was talking about earlier. So when I was talking about like the port and such, he said pull request to Mesa to support PS5's GPU, and then this was actually on March 16th. The pull request got merged, so no user space modifications are needed to run Linux. Oh, and I wrote this post on the PS5 too. And here we've got another one. This is Spider-Man, isn't it? Yep. Here's a screenshot of Spider-Man, 60 frames per second at 1440p using dynamic VRAM size as well. And that looks beautiful. Look at that. I'm sure he's doing this on purpose here, but I do love the irony of taking a PS5 and then jailbreaking it to run Linux on it to play PC ports of PS5 games on Linux. That's never going to be boring to me. I also fixed a bug in the AMD GPU driver that caused no audio. It should fix this issue also on BC250. I believe the BC250, correct me if I'm wrong. Yes, here we go. This is it. Yeah, this is AMD's rare PS5 APU-based 250 mining board, and it resurfaces for, at the time it was resurfacing for $120 and can actually run Cyberpunk 2077. So I've actually known of people who they've been buying these boards, and this is pretty much kind of like an all-in-one computer right here almost. Like you can really just, this kind of is a PS5 on a board essentially. The downside is, or maybe an upside to people, you can only run Linux on it. But there's a lot of really cool stuff you could do. So if you're running Linux on here, the work that The Flow ended up doing, ends up helping BC250 users as well. I did have to come back here because I did want to shout out ZekoShao here, in which he said, finally something decent for the PS5, not piracy, which, yeah, this one was exciting. This one was actually very exciting here. Like, the internet kind of just snapped on this one. By the way, if that wasn't enough, if you haven't been excited enough by Linux on the PS5, Fail Overflow ended up coming out of their hibernation, and they said, method we used over 5 years ago now on PS5 to fiddle with MP4 and hypervisor memory. Hope it helps for Linux, and this is called Prosperous. Now, if we check this out right here, it's always a joy when Fail Overflow decides to pop up right here. There's not like a write-up or anything on here, so you really have to know what you're doing in order to utilize this, but this has been just being added to by Shuffle2. They did add on to this and state, though, by the way, we first used the included IOMMU script to bypass IOMMU and dump x86 kernel text via custom PCIe device in the M2 slot. It worked first try. So really cool to see here. And if you're wondering why this is so exciting, well, the flow himself even stated right here, this will allow my PS5 Linux to run on firmware less than 5.00, which has been patched on firmware 5.00. So just keeping that in mind. So this was really big because originally when the flow was talking about this here, let's see, I'm gonna have to scroll down a little bit. But yeah, he ended up stating here, like I said earlier, that this only works with a full chain exploit like this one here, which is a Hypervisor. And Hypervisor is, well, a PS5 Hypervisor exploit for any firmwares less than or equal to 2.xx firmware. So you originally needed an incredibly low firmware on this here. And this is from Spectre, and hey, what's up, Kiwi? This is from Spectre and Kiwi right here. Kiwi's friend of the show as well, too. So originally you would have needed to get a PS5, if you don't have one already, on a nearly impossibly low firmware to find. But now with this one right here, like he's covering, we at least have access to more systems on here because this will work on any PS5 lower than firmware 5.00. You're still gonna have to try and find one, and I'm thankful that I still held on to my system. I do have one, for anyone who doesn't know, I do have 2 PS5s. One of them I keep up to date, I play online, I get my games on there and such. And then I do have another one which I believe is on firmware 4.03. I've actually shown it in an episode of ModChat, but it really just stays in the box for the most part. But you know what? This might be the reason to get it back out of the box. This might be the reason. Oh yeah, by the way, if that wasn't enough, flatz, like flatz, like flatz, like the person who's also done so many contributions to the PlayStation scenes. Yeah, they also just dropped their own hypervisor exploit as well, too. Like, I mean, the code is right here on their GitHub gist. Oh man, I'm not like laughing at this in an insulting way or anything, but you all see, this is just, I'm just gonna be straight up. This was so much to keep up with right here. We end up, we're eating, we're really eating right here. This is great. This is wonderful. Now I'm going to be citing Dr. Yin Yin yet again here because this is going to be some important context for the next few topics right here. And they're talking about the Star Wars situation for PS5, which, you know that game I talked about in a previous episode, Star Wars Race or Revenge, where it ended up getting announced as a game that could be used to jailbreak PS5s, and I believe should be PS4s as well too, but the PS5 for sure. But there was only like 10,000 physical copies in circulation, or you'd have to like get a digital copy, but you have to be on the latest firmware, so that way you have to like buy it, download it, and then take your system offline. Yeah, and then the price ended up going down because it was determined that it couldn't be used. It's back. It's back. Now, Dr. Yin Yin ended up stating here, let's go ahead and read this. Genuinely recommend that people who don't have the Star Wars game just wait patiently for another kernel exploit, as we have Y2JB and Netflix and Hack up to 12.40 as free, easy to use userlands. Alternatively, since XbDiag can be unpatched, some of you may choose to use services that will no doubt pop up. What I mean is that someone with the Star Wars game will be able to jailbreak your console with it and unpatch XbDiag. This is similar to what people did with the revert on PS4 and Lua demos. To highlight though, this won't leave a copy of the Star Wars game on your console, and additionally, the unpatched XbDiag can be lost if you need to reinstall firmware. digital users are out of luck here till Y2JB and Netflix and Hack are usable for a jailbreak, or somehow the unicorn of a WebKit exploit is found. And you can see there's a couple other shots right here, well, screenshots here. So this is from LuaCore by Gagina, in which they were able to successfully get this running on 9.40 firmware on the PS5. And there's also another one right here showing that they are able to do the same thing up to firmware 13.00 on the PlayStation 4. So, like I said, you are able to use that on PS4, and I believe that was the last use case of it. I believe it was LuaCore could be used to jailbreak the PS4, but I'd even said when covering that there were much better and much cheaper options as opposed to just getting Star Wars Racer Revenge on PS4. Now I shared that because just recently Gagina ended up releasing the 2.1 update for LuaCore, stating that they optimize and stabilize the just-in-time exploit, and now the just-in-time exploit runs within 1 second, and they even have a video right here. We're going to check this out. Let's go ahead, blow this up. Here we go. They go to the Hall of Fame. Look how fast, can we just rewind that? Look how fast that was. Look, you boot up the game, you get in there, Hall of Fame, boom. There we go, Mastercore initialized, because this is all based off Mastercore, excuse me. USA version detected, mounting save data for Lua transition. And let's wait. There we go. Mounted save data at save data 0, executing init Lua, malloc patched, and then right here, LuaCore 2.1 by Gagina, platform PS5, firmware 12.70, and we have the just-in-time exploit initialized. So right there, you have a nice entry point available for this, and it seems to be really fast and really stable here. Really awesome to see overall. They also had another post here showing that this was working on firmware 13.00, so the good news is if you have access to Star Wars Racer Revenge, you will be able to use that as a userland entry point there. Now this is all still in development right here, right? But this is important to highlight because Gagina ended up also tweeting something a little bit earlier to this. I'm going back to the LuaCore 2.0 release, and this was the just-in-time exploit, and this is why the just-in-time exploit is so important here. Now this is big because right here they do state that arbitrary native userland code execution means now we can write and run native homebrew, and potentially might run backup game without kernel exploit. So this is pretty big here, but just be on the lookout and see. This is why people have been looking at this. Typically a full jailbreak, meaning, you know, you get the userland and the kernel tied together and then you have your full jailbreak, is awesome. But this one here, just in time, is certainly something that we're going to see more of. Now, it feels like I might be going back a little bit here because this is from February 20th, and this is for the PS4, but I did want to cover this here with the context of keeping this in mind for what I said earlier about the PS5, that being people talking about unpatching BDJB. For anybody who does not know, BDJB means that you can essentially just burn a disc, like you can burn a modified image onto a Blu-ray disc and just insert it into your PS4 or PS5, and you'll be able to have homebrew access. You'll be able to use that to jailbreak the system, which is super awesome. Now, people looked into unpatching it, which is a odd term that people don't typically use, but that's pretty apt for this here. 15432 was looking into this because they were trying to see if they could get BDJB working on higher firmwares. For example, right now, if you have a PS4 at the moment, the latest firmware that can be jailbroken is 13.00, and that's using View After Free. But at the moment, there's no way to use BDJB, at least publicly out there. But you can end up restoring it. So if you have a system on 13.00, you cannot burn a disk, pop it into that system, and just play it. But you can jailbreak the system with View, then you end up unpatching it with a vulnerable system file, which then ends up allowing you to use your old BDJB disks. And here, 15432 even states, I'm tired of searching for what Sony has fixed in 13.04. So here's a way to run BDJB using some other existing hack, View for example. It relies on the fact that any code in the BDJB apps lib ext folder gets maximum permissions. This could be useful to get rid of network requirements or to increase the hack stability. Not very useful, I know, right? 1. Run Goldhen using View Hack. 2. Connect to the PS4 using FTP. 3. Enable read-write access for system folders by sending the mtrw command. 4, you need to put this jar file 00000.jar to this folder right here, and he even replaced it here with a jar that is compatible with any 12.52 BDJB, so there's no need to burn a new disk now. And then 5, you reboot the console and you can now burn the BDJB ISO file and run the hack. So the reason why I'm covering this here is because it has been confirmed not only this works on PS4, but you could even do the same thing on PS5. So for that game Star Wars Racer Revenge, for example, the idea would be that people are going to have maybe some services where essentially you can send your system to them, they have the game, they end up loading the game onto your system, like the disk itself, they load the game on there, they set up the jailbreak, and then what they can do is they can end up unpatching your system so that your system can be jailbroken using a BDJB disk, and then you can just use a BDJB disk to run your jailbreak. That's certainly a lot to get it going. I'm not quite sure how many people are really going to be using or benefiting that, and even though I do find this really cool, this here is something like replacing these system files. This is something that we've seen with other scenes. For example, HFW, like hybrid firmware for the PS3, that ends up working as it is because what they do is they end up taking an old WebKit file, they put it into the new firmware, and that way it can install because it's still a signed file. It's still a signed WebKit, you know what I mean? So that's how that's able to work. We've seen this before. My only thing is here on PS5, I guess if you cannot get the game, if you cannot afford it, and if you're really desperate to jailbreak your PS5, I suppose that's going to help for people who do have it, who might want to send off their system, do whatever they want to on there. But for something like the PS4, I guess my opinion is more just wait for updated versions of BDJB to come out as opposed to unpatching it here. Unless you really want to use your BDJB disk on a higher firmware, then I mean, you can do you. We've got some quick developments here from earthonion. A lot of these are really cool to see here. We have a new one here. This is it a payload? Let me see. Yes, it is a payload for PS4 and PS5, and this is NP account restore, which I am going to say this might not appeal to many people on here, so if this doesn't directly appeal to you, totally fine. But here, restore your PSN account configuration on a jailbroken PS4 or PS5. This payload restores authentic config.dat and auth.dat from a console, writing the account configuration to the system registry. Although they do warn that this could corrupt your users, so just keep that in mind. Now you do need a console that has been signed into PSN and activated, so a legitimate one, not like the fake sign-in or the fake activation there, so you can extract the files from it. You'll need a jailbroken target console, and you'll also need a way to send ELF payloads to the target console. So there's a myriad of ways you can do that with. The instructions are right here, but in short, some people might be asking, can I download my games and licenses from PSN? No. Can I activate my account through Sony? No. Can I play online? No. What does this tool actually do? It simply restores an account that was signed in on one console to another. It copies the account configuration from config.dat into the system registry so the target console recognizes the account. This is no different than logging into your console normally and choosing not to update in order to maintain jailbreak status. So if you have all this available to you, have fun with it. They've also ended up releasing Garlic Worker right here, which this works with GarlicSaves, and this is actually the worker there, but they say that this is to help decrypt, encrypt, and resign PS4 and PS5 saves. This is the PS4 and PS5 save processing worker for GarlicSaves.com. And again, it handles decrypt, encrypt, resign, and re-region operations on jailbroken consoles. If you haven't seen GarlicSaves.com, this is a great tool right here, and it says free and open source PS4 and PS5 save tools, in which you can decrypt, encrypt, resign, and re-region your PlayStation saves right from your browser. No PC tools needed. Just upload, pick what you want, and download. Or you could even run it locally on your PS5, and we'll be talking about that as well too. So I've used this before, and really you can sign in, you can use this to re-sign your saves, and this here is for like encrypted, signed, legitimate saves as well too. This is really awesome here, so if you haven't checked it out, you might want to give this a shot. But for jailbroken PS5 owners, they even have the Garlic Save Manager, which it states is a local save manager for your PS5. Again, you can save, decrypt, encrypt, and browse with embedded web UI, and really all you need to do is you need to send the ELF to the ELF loader. You can open it up using your PS5's IP address over port 8082, and from there you can drag and drop files into the Browse tab to add and replace files, so you can really do all of your save management on your PS5 now. With that quick blast done right here, I did want to highlight this again from Mutual here, the Stone Modder, which I just noticed. I didn't notice this until now. I love that they have shrimp as their profile picture on here. But this is Porkfolio they've been working on, which is an all-in-one PS5 utility for managing your PS5 game library, local backups, backporks. By the way, that is not a misspelling right there. Backpork, in case you don't know, is something I covered in a previous episode, which allows you to run games which require higher firmwares on the PS5 on lower firmware PS5s. But also covers FTP transfers, media, cheats, avatars, save files, system streaming, jailbreak payloads, and more. They do state that please expect bugs and be ready to report them. And this does require Windows, a PS5 with FTP enabled, so you do need a jailbroken system, as well as a USB capture card. But they state that this is only required for the system view streaming feature. Point being here, there's a lot of really nice features, but you can check this out. If we look at the dashboard here, you can see this is a little bit of what it looks like right here. So it looks really clean. Once you have your game library, it all looks a little bit like that. So you can manage all your games. You can do whatever you want to there. It's able to detect your backups pretty easily there with any of your back porks. So that is, like I said, the games that do require a higher firmware, but they've been modified to work on a lower firmware on your system. There's so much here. There's a transfer manager, hash verification, even media. You can browse this on here, browse, download, and share screenshots and video clips on your PS5. You've got the system view right here. Like they said, you will need a capture card on this, but you do have that available all in one application. You've got the cheats available right here, so plenty of cheats. You can change your X avatar right there. So, oh, shrimp is there again. That's wonderful. The local save manager. GarlicSaves is available, so if you want to integrate with that directly, you can. Even Void Shell as well, too. There's been so many developments on the PS5, man. So many. So you have this available, but you do need Void Shell to be up and running on here. PS Notify, so you got that available. Database Explorer, several jailbreak tools are available on this. Game conversion, but this one is Windows only. Just keep that in mind. This just allows you to convert game backups between formats because there's so many available here. And if English isn't your language, there's even multiple languages available here. So a really cool release overall that I'm sure can help out many jailbroken PS5 users. Now, this is something I was really excited about. I'm still excited about, and this is going to be another controversial topic, I suppose, on here. I'm going to get a little bit opinionated on this, but for anybody who does not know, we're going way back to the Dreamcast. We're done with the PlayStation stuff here. Well, actually, kind of, but not PS4, PS5 on this episode. Since we're close to the end here, debatably you can say, you know, saving the best for last on this. I was pretty excited about this, but this here is SEGAGAGA English translation for the Dreamcast. Now, for those who do not know, SEGAGAGA is a Japanese exclusive Dreamcast RPG that came out very late into the system's life cycle in Japan, and it is a wacky game. It is weird. It is funny. It is... The best way I can describe it is it feels like a homebrew developer ended up making a tongue-in-cheek RPG game on the Dreamcast that was made by developers for developers, so developers could play this and laugh about development. Except it was an official game, which is even crazier to see here. But it was never localized outside Japan. It was never released outside of Japan. It was never translated. But it's finally been translated years later. I think this is it right here. It came out in March 2001, and then this ended up coming out 25 years later. It took a long time for this to drop. Now, if you're listening to this and you're wondering why I don't sound as excited, as enthusiastic about it here or anything, and keep in mind, I have played this patch, right? And I'm actually going to be more in defense of it here. But this here is a full English translation patch, so you are able to play the full game start to finish in English. There's been so much work and so much effort that has been done here. You could see all this available, and it is a wacky game, right? It is funny, it is wacky, it is odd, it is, I believe they even described at one point, it is extremely Japanese, so keep that in mind. There's patching instructions, all that available right here. But the thing is here, there has also been a major downside to many people who were excited about this, which kind of end up being a bit like splashing just like a tub of cold water on someone. If we scroll down here, there is right down, it's a long one. It's a long one. Right here, there is an AI notice, and they state here, due to the importance of SEGAGAGA to the fan translation community, I think it is important to disclose where AI was used in the development of this translation patch. What I call the playtesting translation, a base translation that allowed the artists and playtesters to get started early and understand what they are working on, was developed using a combination of DeepL and ChatGPT 4.0 4.5. That translation then went through a substantial months-long human translator review. I don't think that the end product feels machine translated, but that's ultimately for you, the player, to judge. For the purists, we're offering the tools to develop the translation. So if you are a translator who wants to do your very own translation of SEGAGAGA, you now have the means to do so. Check out the resources section to get them. The beauty of the fan translation community is that people are always refining and developing new translations and giving them back to the community. Go forth and prosper. And we can check out the resources section right here. And if you check this out, resources, here is the perfect guide here, which is a walkthrough, the cutting room floor entry, debug modes. Right here, these are the resources. So want to do your own translation, all the tools are now available. So here is the SGGG bin translation, which allows for the updating of game text found in the main library. The MES, which allows for updating the text found in SEGAGAGA's MES files, pre- and post-chapter dialogue scenes. SGGGE, this allows for extraction and reinsertion of the textures, and Ninja Subs. This allows for insertion of custom subtitles into scenes that otherwise did not have subtitles. So just keep all that in mind. Now, the reason why I really wanted to talk about this here is because, one, this is a game that I wanted to play for an incredibly long time. When I found out about this, I ended up playing it. I played about 2 or 3 hours, let's say, and I'll say this from my own opinion on there. The translation is rough in spots. Now, I do believe that there were people who were nitpicking it. They were taking, like, not these ones here, but they were taking, like, specific screenshots, and they're just saying, look at how bad this is. Look at how bad this is. Look, it's really, really bad. And unfortunately, I guess the best way I could describe it is that Twitter essentially gave it the Forspoken treatment. Forspoken is a game that came out a few years ago by Square Enix, and they were taking some of like the cringy parts of the game where, you know, the characters, when they said something, it didn't flow quite right or it was kind of awkward, and they just kept clipping those parts and saying, hey, this is a bad game. This is bad. Just look at this. I end up playing it for myself, and eventually I end up buying it, but the parts that are cringy are cringe within context. And by that, I mean, you got to realize you have to take the story into account, the character, what is happening. Just it makes sense within context. But if you just pull it out, it looks like the game has really bad design and really bad delivery of the characters there. While as this is not Forspoken, I was noticing some things like, for example, this just might be, it's not even the exact word, but like the word amount, like very early on, like a basic word like that was misspelled. So that was more of a human thing right there. Now, I feel like if you are interested in playing this, there's really two groups of people. There's people who don't care about the controversy. They're excited for an English version of this game and they're going to play it. And there's people who are not going to play it and they want to avoid it because they hate that AI was being used for this here. And they don't think AI should belong in game development. And this kind of opens up a bigger discussion here, which is what I want to talk about. Now, this is going to be a lot of my own opinion here, right? But overall, my opinion of AI is that I don't like it in art. I don't like AI art that is generated. I am not a fan of that. I want human-made art. I want human-written books. I want human-made music, human-made games, even beats that are produced by, like, on a computer, for example. I want that to be done by a human. I think AI can be used as a tool, and I also do believe that we are in an AI bubble, but much like other bubbles, such as the .com bubble, for example, it is going to be something that is here to stay. So you're going to have to get used to it, unfortunately. There is going to be AI and things. I do believe, like I said, I believe we're in a bubble. I believe it's going to pop at one point. And when that happens, there's going to be a lot of AI stuff that's going to fall off. But for example, we're not going to see AI in every single app and every single website. Like, it's not going to be on Chipotle, for example, even though every single integration like that is typically just a wrapper with ChatGPT. However, I did want to zoom in on this, and I'll like literally zoom in on it as well too. I did want to talk about this more because this does bring up a bigger point of this. Now, I'm one of those people, I do believe that AI could be used for translation. It could be used to help out with things like this. Is it going to be perfect? No. Is it going to hallucinate? Yes. But is it a way where you can get translation translation up and running? Sure. And especially if you're able to take the text and you can translate it. And then, like they said, they used a months-long human translator review to get this done because there was a substantial amount of work there. Now, when it comes to any type of ethics of using AI, yeah, there is going to be a lot of, issues around data centers, issues around water, issues around electricity usage. I'm not going to deny any of those things, but like I said earlier, I do believe that's kind of one of those kind of sort of necessary evils that it's kind of just going to be here to stay. If you want to completely avoid AI, I'll tell you good luck on that. But I also think there's a little bit more of a ethical way to use AI. Like, for example, this is more me nitpicking here, but they said here that this was developed using a combination of DeepL and ChatGPT 4.0 and 4.5. I think if they wanted to be a little more ethical about it, they could have run their own LLMs and their own LLM suites on their own hardware, and that way they wouldn't have to use any of these services out there. They could really just do everything localized, or they could have even contacted people who did have hardware powerful enough that they could run local LLMs and they can do that translation, because that is a lot of effort for that. And if you don't agree with what some of these companies are doing, such as Anthropic or OpenAI or any of these other companies, what they're doing with maybe their policies, with their platforms, with applications, with any of that, that way you can kind of just bring everything to a more localized setup. And I will say there's also going to be people who will state AI wasn't used in fan translations before. Why should we do it now? Why is this different? Why should we tolerate this now? Machine translation wasn't used for these. Why should we tolerate it now? And to those people, I can say, yeah, most certainly, and we are seeing changes in times and such, but there's also nothing I can really say that's going to convince you that this is better here. And meanwhile, I'm not even saying this is better. This here was done by people who are not native Japanese speakers here, so they really had to work with something quite niche. And like I said, they did at least go through and use a human translator on here. Now, we've seen more and more AI in modern game development, and there's people who even just completely avoid playing certain games because of the AI usage. One of them, for example, is Arc Raiders. I know of several people who have completely avoided playing Arc Raiders, and I myself, I'm actually one of those people. I avoided playing Arc Raiders because of this here. Now, it's not that the game is bad or anything, it's more my issue with it was that they were using AI for voice lines in there, and they could have hired someone to do that very easily. I believe with voice acting, for example, like, just like me talking here, for example, that needs to be done by a human. Just because we can use AI to do voices in a game, I would understand it from a placeholder perspective, but for a game that I'm actually going to purchase and play, and a game that is in production, prod, running on prod, and it's actually out there, no, I don't see a need for that. At that point, like I said, if it's going to be used as placeholder, I don't mind that, but that's going to be in development. Once it's out of development and released, those voice actors need to be actual, real, fleshy humans. And I actually had to look this up because just a few days ago, it looks like that Arc Raiders is actually replacing its AI-generated voice lines, and it's now starting to use professional actors. So I guess it's good that they are doing that, they're righting that wrong. I'm just surprised it took so long to do it, but even so, I'm actually more surprised that they end up doing this in the first place. And you even see right here that the CEO of Embark Studios admitted that there is a quality difference when it comes to using voice actors versus AI, which, I mean, yeah, that's obvious. However, one game that is incredibly near and dear to me, Expedition 33, one of my favorite games of all time, ended up getting blasted recently when it won awards, but even last year when it ended up releasing because of some small AI textures. Now, you can see there's a tweet from Neandomancer here on Twitter in which they say, correct me if I'm wrong, but it appears as though Claire Obscure Expedition 33 used generative AI for these textures. And yeah, it certainly looks like generative AI. Now, this was posted April 25th, 2025, and this is updated pretty quickly. You can see here they have another tweet from April 29th, 2025, in which they state here, excellent, the AI-generated textures in Clair Obscur were indeed placeholders and were replaced with custom assets. The other AI-generated poster that was present in the starting area, don't have a screenshot of it now, was also removed. And this is again something I would find acceptable. I believe if you are developing a game, and this would be something, honestly, I'm okay with. If you're developing a game, if you just need like some newspaper textures like this, if you just want to use like Gen AI just to put them in there just for the sake of having something while you're doing your active development, I do understand that. Although, like I said, when this game ends up getting out, when it gets a proper release, when people are paying for it, those textures do need to be removed, and that is what they did. This here, what we're seeing, some people might be wondering why I'm excusing it here. This, you could see, was clearly more of a mistake. Like, yes, they used the generative AI textures in here, and they meant to replace them, and this is just... how often are they really looking at newspapers here? So, like, this is just a small thing. Like, for example, if, like, Lune's outfit right here and all this was entirely, like, AI generated and they forgot to take it out, that'd be a bigger issue. But for just something like this that most people aren't even going to notice, I can see why that was skipped. And they ended up patching this out pretty dang quickly. So it clearly wasn't meant to be in there, and it was just a placeholder asset, which... guess what? That happens in game development. This is all to say, the unfortunate thing with something so big like the SEGAGAGA translation being really marred by the usage of AI on here was, I'm sure, something disappointing not only to the people who worked on this Megavolt 85 Mad Sheep, Vincent Inel, and Derek Pasquarello, or A-Team on there. I'm sure that was disappointing that that was really, you know, just kind of getting a bunch of cold water splashed on you, but this is something that people feel passionately about. My opinion on this, like I said, I did play it for several hours. I did enjoy it. It is rough in spots, and part of it, I'm sure you can tell, is from like the AI usage on there, but also part of it is just kind of trying to figure out what contextually works and what is being said if you're not a native Japanese speaker and you're trying to translate an incredibly Japanese game. But there's been some people who they've been outspoken, and I've even gotten into, I guess, some arguments you can say about this as well too. And there's people who say AI just shouldn't be used for game development. It shouldn't be used for this. AI bad because AI is bad. And to that, I'll say there's nothing I can really say to change your mind on here. But what I've been telling these people, because there's been some people who they had really good ideas, they said they shouldn't have used AI for this. Instead, the developers should have done this, they 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 should have done this. And to that, I tell them, cool, that's awesome. That is an incredible idea. If you have that idea, please turn it into a solution. Look at this. We can go to AI Notice. We can go to resources. You have all the resources right here. If you have a really good idea on how to improve this translation and do it properly without AI or with minimal AI usage, please, I welcome that. Please do it, because I'm going to be honest, I'm selfish. I want to play this game. I'd like to play a better translation. And if this can upset people enough to actually put these solutions into place as opposed to just complaining about the issue here, then I'm all for having a better translation. Please, somebody contribute, like make a better translation than this. I'm sure the developers here would be happy, because if anything, it would start kicking off the motivation to do a better and bigger translation. Because the thing is too, there's people who are saying this should have been done, this should have been done. Guess what? The game's been out for 25 years. This is the first full translation patch that came out. All right. If these ideas were so good, if that was all out there, if that was all underway, I feel like we would have seen a translation patch for this game come out years ago, not 25 years after the release. The last point I want to make on this as well is that a game like Arc Raiders, this is a big game. It's selling gangbusters. They made more than enough money overall, and even if it wasn't like big like it is now, they have made enough. They were selling this product, all right? It shouldn't have had AI voices in the final product. Those voices should have been fleshy, real voice actors who were doing those voices. Expedition 33, like I said, I understand the development flow of this. I get it, that this is just a placeholder image right here. They just had to kind of put like some kind of newspaper type thing that ended up fitting there. I understand that, and it looks like they just, like I said, they forgot to take it out of the build, so they had to patch it out. That's all it was, because if you're going through, you're scrubbing all that, you're probably going to miss something like that pretty easily. The big difference is that those are two games with a lot of studios, a lot of people behind them, and a lot of backing. This here is not that. This here is 4 people who were working on translating an obscure Dreamcast game that came out 25 years ago to release a free English patch online that they can't make money off of. They cannot burn this game and sell it. They cannot sell this patch. They cannot do any of that. They're not going to be selling this here. They really all did this out of volunteer work and out of love, and they did it for free. So that's why there's also just a part of me where overall I'm kind of like, could they have done things differently? Sure. Should they have done things differently? It's really up to you to believe that on there. But if you don't like it, don't play it, don't pick it up, don't try to patch it or anything. And if you really hate this enough and you have some ideas and you're saying like, they should have done this, they should have done that, you could have done all this stuff. Again, I will say this, and I'm saying this from a selfish point of view here, but this is for the greater community. please take that aggression and channel it into a solution using the resources they've given to make a better patch that the rest of us can enjoy. That's what I have to say here. So this has been a really long episode. I'm not gonna lie, I'm tired keeping up with all this stuff, recording here, doing all that. It is a little bit late where I'm recording here, but guess what? There's going to be one last thing I'm going to cover here. It's PlayStation related, something completely out of left field that most people would not expect, but what I like to do is at the end of these episodes, I like to find something funny, cool, interesting, what have you, related to, or maybe even indirectly related to the world of modding and video game console modding. And that here is unofficial Undertale PS2 port by Mr. Power Gamer BR. This is over on Reddit. Of course, it's going to be linked down below in the description. Not like the full game, but they're showing how to do this here. But just check this out, right? There is a video you could play. They have their OPL up and running. They're loading this up. There we go. Let's wait for it. We got the colors again. Yet again. Butterscotch is loading. It's loading all this. And I promise you it is Undertale. Initializing renderer. Initializing first room. There we go. There we go. Undertale on PS2, if you can believe it. We can even skip ahead a little bit. It's actually working. This is Undertale on PS2. So if you've ever wanted to play Undertale on PS2, boom, you've got Undertale on PS2. They even state here, this is not actually a port or remake. This is a Game Maker Studio runner reimplementation. So contrary to other unofficial Undertale ports that were attempted previously, this is the full game. You can't fully beat it yet because there are things not implemented and performance is really bad at some points, but you can go pretty dang far. So pretty cool to see here. Either way, that is about it for this episode of ModChat. I know it was a long one, and if you made it to the end of this episode, seriously, thank you. I really appreciate it. Like, awesome. Thank you for hanging out here. That's been really cool. Now, typically at the end of these episodes, I like to pick a keyword or key phrase that you can use in a comment on the video upload. And if you use this comment on the video upload, I'll know that you made it to the end of this episode. Now, typically I like to pick something off my desk, or I like to kind of pick something that's just, I don't know, related to something relevant in my life, you know? And actually, I'm going to go with the latter right here. A little bit of a gore warning, not necessarily, but there's a little bit of blood here. You might be able to see this, but can I show that on camera? Yeah. That right there is a little bit of a cut I have, and that down there is Lily, you could see. Today was bath day for Lily. Lily doesn't like bath day. But we made it. We made it. That's why she doesn't have her collar back there, because she's drying, but she looks really fluffy and funny back there, and she's a little tired because, again, she doesn't like bath day. I've had her for so many years, and it still seems like it's a fight every single time, although she's kind of, like, chilled out the last few years at least, so. But there's still certain parts she doesn't like. Either way, at least there's a clean dog back there, but let's go with this, right? Let's, we're gonna go with clean. How about that? Do you have a recommended process for cleaning your computer? Do you have certain applications you use to clean out, like, I don't know, old directories, temporary files, registry keys? Do you have pets that love getting clean, that hate getting clean? I know Lily, for example, she absolutely hates the process of the bath, but it seems like by the time we're kind of getting done and by the time the bath is actually over, she likes the end result. She does like the clean part of it. She just doesn't like the bath part of it, which is why, you know, I have this right here. So either way, that's about it for this episode of ModChat. If you enjoyed this video, a like would absolutely be appreciated. If you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too. But as I always say, this is Mr. Mario signing off. Thank you all for listening and watching, everyone. And until next month.